So, I'm a blacksmith. I started at King Alfred School as blacksmith in residence about 8 years ago. I got a text from a friend saying, "Do you want a job?" That was all the information in the text, and I just said yes. I was given a date, a time, and an address, and I just turned up. And it was in a school. I'd done a pretty good job of avoiding children up until this point and had no desire to work in education. But here it was in a school. I did a tour, I met people, I saw the forge. It was a really great space for blacksmithing. It had a really good vibe about it, and it made me smile when I first saw it. My friend, about to be in inverted commas, said, "So next week I'm off to France for a few months, so it'll just be you." And that's how I inherited a forge in a school in an afternoon. There was no plan. I thought about it a lot over the weekend, and the visual in my head was pretty much like when they realized they no longer have a pilot in the film Airplane. So I decided that I needed a plan. And I reckoned on a few things. Kids are no different from adults, and I was going to treat them the same way. And my own education was grim, so I decided that doing the complete opposite to that was the way forward. And importantly, to make toasting forks with them. That way I reckoned if they didn't like it, it'd be nice to make your own toast on the fire when we were done. And this was going to be blacksmithing, because there's no such thing as blacksmithing for kids. At 2 o'clock on the Friday afternoon, a handful of kids tipped up to the forge. The ones that had been sent ranged in age from about 11 to 13. We went through the health and safety of why you wear gloves, goggles, and a leather apron. I told them what I'd seen happen to people I'd worked with who'd been stupid, and they bought into it. And they came in and they lit the forge. The questions started thick and fast about the fire. Most I'd never been asked by an adult. I feel that adults aren't really capable of daring to ask what they really want to. All these questions were much more interesting. The kids started having a stab at answering each other's questions, and in some instances, understanding in real time and answering themselves. I was quite into it. We talked about what we needed the toasting forks to do, and thinking again about my own education, I didn't want them in a row making the same thing like a factory, so the designs were over to them. And without any guidance, they kind of formed a working group. I handed them some engineering chalk, and they had a quick chat. And this was their brief. They needed to be long enough not to burn yourself in the fire, and only big enough for one piece of toast at a time, because any more is greediness. How perfect is that? So I showed them how to heat a bit of bar in the fire, and to put a point on the end, which is drawing down, and to bend, quench, and hot cut. And within a few minutes, we were ready to go. And this was the only time I was nervous. If you've ever worked in a forge, you'll know about the dance. I'm not sure if anyone else calls it that, but it's a series of timings of heating, hitting, and moving around in the space. It's all unscripted, rhythmic, and it gives an immediate feeling of camaraderie and acceptance within the space. So the kids got it immediately. They loved it. There was no politics, no baggage, a complete level playing field. No one had a clue how it worked up until now, and the pressure, it seemed, was off. They were completely synchronous, and you could see them just relax into it. The steel is in charge, and we move about as it dictates, depending on what state it's in. And that's why it works. It's always felt to me quite honest. And because stuff is happening everywhere, all around you, and involving all your senses, I think you let your guard down. There's no time for it. It's liberating and quite a relief, actually. When the bar heats in the fire, there's time for conversations about anything. But that time is finite. And when your steel is cooked and ready, you're off to your anvil. And in these moments of intense activity, the metal moves and changes. And when the kids return to the fire, their ideas have too. Everything moves at the forge's pace and rhythm. It is a natural physical timing where ideas can breathe. Pretty quickly, I realized that kids are terrible at looking after themselves, but brilliant at looking after each other. I mentioned this to the kids, and they said, yeah, they would keep an eye on each other, and I had nothing to worry about. It became apparent if we shared our concerns, we could work it out. I was surprised at how reasonable they were. I was working in a forge once and no one thought to tell me that my jeans were on fire, which is true. These kids are better than that. The students help each other out in a thoughtful way. It might be a bit of encouragement hidden in banter, or a bit of physical assistance. Not bowling in and taking over, they allow each other to fail and have a go at all the options first. I've never seen people being so reasonable with each other. The only intervention on my part was a bit of technical assistance. This is what they mean from leading from the back, I reckon. It's worth mentioning, if I had done this with a bunch of adults, one of the only differences would have been the administering of first aid. Adults are terrible. Young people really deserve credit. The way they manage themselves is a joy. And during my health and safety talks these days, I always go on about how much I hate filling in forms and doing paperwork. It's Northern for, I like you, be careful. So anyway, back to these toasting forks. If I didn't know what we were making, I'd have no idea what I was looking at. They all worked, and not only that, they were clever. There was one that had the ability for toasting sandwiches, there were genius attachments for toasting marshmallows, and one that had a complete redesign to save metal. There was so much going on, and we were all smiling, and as they were eating all the toast in the world at pace, there were loads of chalk drawings on top of the anvils about how they could be improved. None of this was me. They'd gone at this together, and some sort of primal craft way of working for me seemed to be already in them. I was just sharing blacksmithing with them. And at 4 o'clock, these excited, exhausted, and filthy kids left to go home. And I can honestly say, I've never learned so much in all my life. As the weeks went on, these sessions went really well, and I was asked to work with kids one-to-one, and after-school clubs were formed. And if you go down to the forge now, you'll find a steel spike that was hammered into a log by a group of 11-year-olds. Each had about 5 hits to hammer it in. And they decided that when they're 18, they were going to come back and try and pull it out with their bare hands. So one true blacksmith would be crowned. They came back a lot. And when they were eventually 18, it was hilarious seeing these big lads taking it in turns with great ceremony to try and get this bit of steel out. We're still waiting for the one true blacksmith. And in my heart, I can't wait for the wood to rot and for some tiny kid to be crowned. The forge is there for anyone who needs its magic. And if all you want to do is bring an object to life out of a bit of steel, then that's what's happening. But I've always said, after a couple of sessions, you don't make what you want, but you make what you need. A student feeling vulnerable decided to make something. My immediate thought would be that he'd want to make a weapon, but he actually wanted to make a shield, something to give him armor and offer him protection. It's wonderful and literal, and while making it, hearing someone talk about how they always get it wrong, why people lash out when they don't mean to. For all these times, the shield can strengthen and protect. We can all empathise, we've all got it wrong, and hearing and let it out bit by bit seemed really natural, until at the end of the session, they literally let their guards out. Sometimes though, the forge is not enough, and that's why we put loads of seating down there. Being outside in a small wooded area is sometimes important, and being outside with no ceiling pressing down is what's required. The students know what they need, and they know they're welcome to it when they need it. The forge enables you to be as alive as you can as a person, different age groups, learning and sharing on the spot. And often, and maybe oddly, it's not about the results. We never have a firm plan of what we want to make. There's been times when students have come down, heard the hammering on the anvil, and got out their instruments and used the rhythm much as they would a drum beat. Or if they're reading Great Expectations, they want to feel what it was like for Pip and make the objects that he would have made. But some of the best sessions, though, are just the pure physical release. I've watched the day drop off kids and seen them walk away 2 feet taller. Currently, there are 3 blacksmiths in the forge. There's an apprentice, there's a blacksmith comfortable with holding it all in their hands, and the one who's already done their 10,000 hours. The old one, the one who knows their job now is to get it in a position where it doesn't need them. It's painful and wonderful at the same time. No one owns the forge, in my opinion. We're all just sharing it. And if you have a skill or knowledge, the only way you can move forward is just to let it go. And blacksmithing with all kinds of people and watching it unpack in different ways means you learn every day. The Forge here is quite a wonderful place to work, and the best thing I can say about it is this. I can't wait to see what we're going to make down there next. It might not be beautiful, it might not even work, but I know it will matter. Thanks.